Hi, I'm Jelle.
And I'm Feli.
I think, we have this portal, right, Azure, and you can make your machine learning stuff in there using a workspace. That's clear, good. And there used to be this other studio thingy where you had this click, drag, drop designer feel to your machine learning experiments. I think it still exists. It's a bit like deprecated-ish. But there's this new workspace, and you can do something similar there. That's right.
Yeah. We used to have the classic machine learning studio, and when the entire new workspace and the new version, upgraded version, was made, it changed names, and it's now called the Designer. And today we'll just show you how that works and a couple of the options that we have, and basically how to work with it and how to build an experiment on there.
Interesting. So if you're using the designer and you're designing your own experiment, if you're used to maybe automated ML like me, I think you'll have to have some more knowledge of what you're doing. So if you let's say I'm creating an experiment, I would like to have like the steps. I'll need that, right? I need to know what we're going to do.
Yeah. So with every machine learning experience that you make, you kind of have the same steps that you go through. So the first is you have to choose your data set, then you clean your data, you split your data in a train set and a test set, just so that you can later test how well your algorithm performs. Then you actually apply the algorithm, you train your algorithm, and then you score and evaluate. And no matter what you're doing with machine learning, you'll always kind of see these 5 steps. And you can always you always need a data set, and you always have an algorithm, and you always want to score it. So these are kind of the 5 steps that you can keep in mind with any kind of machine learning that you do.
So we're going to follow these 5 steps in the Azure Workspace Designer environment.
Yes.
And we're going to create a model that predicts something, that fits something. That's interesting. Can you show me?
Yes, I can.
Good.
So you can see on my screen that we're back in the Azure Machine Learning Studio. And today we're going to look at the Designer. So if you click here, you can see that I already have quite a couple of pipelines set up, but today we're going to focus on making a new pipeline. So what I can just do is I can choose to make a new pipeline. And then you see this. What happens is that you have this empty space in the middle, and then on one side you have your building blocks. This is what you use to make your actual pipeline, and then on the other side you can see some settings and stuff like that.
It looks a bit intimidating, but there's like a lot of documentation, right?
There is. Some of the documentation is still a bit outdated. It talks about the classic machine learning studio that we used to have, but that old machine learning studio kind of has the same building blocks. And today we're going to show you all of the building blocks that you need to make your basic experiment. And then, once you understand those basic blocks, you can drag new blocks in, and with every block there is an explanation on what it actually does. So
you're going to use one of the sample sets
yes.
for the data? I'm just guessing, but maybe it's going to be the binary classification data set that Azure has for you, like the one on people and their incomes and stuff like that?
Yeah, the adult census income binary classification data set.
That's a data set where you have all kinds of property on anonymous, privacy sensitive columns of data where you can use like age and sex and education.
Yeah.
And you can use that to predict how well they're doing financially. Well, you can predict their income, whether it's there's like it's like a classification
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
right?
Like if I go here, I can see that I have data sets. These are the data sets I imported myself. But there are also a couple of sample data sets. So you can just choose one of these data sets. I'm choosing this one, and I can just click and drag it to here. And now here I can see some information about the data set. But if I actually right-click, I get some options, including visualize. And here I can visualize the dataset outcome. And here I can easily see the dataset.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it's really important that you know what kind of data you're working with before you start to experiment. And this is like a preset dataset, but you can also import your own, just like with automated ML or other. Yeah, so still the flexibility, that's good. So what's the dataset about?
Yeah, so this is the dataset that the census got, and you get information like the age of a person, their education, the years, the amount of years that they got education, relationship, race, sex, but also their income. You either earn less than 50,000 or more than 50,000. These are the only two incomes that you get in this data set, which makes it, if you want to classify income, you will get a classification. You will need a classification income because you want to classify their income.
So you could also do regression, but then you'd need the actual number of money earned, like you earned 40,700,
yes.
I'm guessing dollars. So then you could do regression, but this time we're doing classification, and I saw you drag that data into the let's say the playing field.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to do with all of them, drag and drop.
Yeah, it's purely drag and drop, and there will be a couple of settings that you might be able to change, but it is drag and drop. You don't have to do any coding with this one. If you look at the dataset, you will see that it doesn't have any missing values or anything like that, because the next step that we have after choose dataset is clean data.
Mm-hmm.
With this one, we don't have any missing values or something like that.
I'll do the cleaning then. Yeah.
Well, we still have a column. This is some kind of, it was a sampling weight. So it is some information that we are not going to use. It is a sampling weight that they put into the data set. But for us, this is not something that we want to classify on.
It's not a valid predictor.
Yeah. So this is not a feature that we want to use, which is why we want to clean the data by removing this one column.
Yeah.
You wanted to do the cleaning. Do you still want to do?
Yeah. So I'm gonna search for the right asset, and well, I'll let you do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what you want to do is you want to delete a column. So you want to select which columns you want. So basically, you just type select columns in dataset.
That's good.
So you can immediately see that there is a little description and other information like that, but the naming does make sense.
Although it helps if you've done it before.
It helps if you've done it before.
Luckily, there's a lot of samples that you can also see, because we're doing it from scratch now. But there's also a lot of created pipelines and help that you can use to maybe see what the possibilities are. Although I would recommend just getting in there, trying out stuff, see what you want to do and how you do it, because that's the way you learn.
Yeah, and there's a machine learning gallery that has a bunch of samples that you can just check what they're doing. But what also helps is they are categorized, so you might think, oh, I want to do something with data cleaning, data transformation, and then you can already see some of your options. And if you kind of scroll through this, you do often find the option that you might want.
All right. But I see that there's this little triangle now, so I'm guessing that doesn't mean it's done. I'm guessing it means we still have to do something.
Yeah. So the first thing that we can do is connect the actual data set to the next block. Because,
Okay.
yeah.
So this is also why they call it a pipeline, because you're connecting steps.
Yeah. And the next thing that we do is we have here select columns in dataset. And the little exclamation point means that we still need to do something before it's going to work. If we click on it, we can see here a value is required. And this basically says, yes, you want to select columns in your dataset, but which ones do you want to select? If you just click Edit Column, you're here, and you can choose to either include columns that maybe, like maybe certain types of columns, or maybe you want to do all of the columns, but you can also go by name. And in this case, we want to add all except
The one that
the
we
weight.
didn't want.
Yeah. And this is already our selected column, so we press save, and our little triangle disappears. It seems to be happy again.
All right, so we have 2 of the 5 steps down.
Yes.
Let's continue.
Yeah. So our next step is we want to split our data in a train and test set. So we want to do something with split data. Again, makes sense, that name.
Makes sense.
We connect it to our previous step because here the input is the full data set and the output will be a data frame directory. Here we need a data frame directory, and that's how you can check whether your little building blocks will fit on each other.
The fact that like each step has like an input node and an output node, but the split data actually, well, it makes sense. You're splitting your data, so you'll have 2 output nodes.
Yeah, so you can see you have results dataset 1, and here you have results dataset 2. You also have a couple of options, like the fraction of rows in the first output dataset. This just means, do you want to halve the dataset, or do you maybe want to do 70% on one side and 30% on the other side? Other things that you can do is randomized split, which basically means, do you want to make extra sure that your split is random? There's just, with every building block that you take, there is a couple of options, but with most of them, you already have a default value, and a lot of them you don't actually have to change something unless you want to and know what you're doing.
Yeah, so you have some configuration options. You don't have total control, you have some configuration options, and they're usually enough.
Yes, yeah. So the next step is we want to do the actual algorithm. So for that one, model training seems like a nice category, and in model training you will see train model. Good. So we have this one.
This one has multiple input nodes.
Yes, so one of the nodes needs an untrained model and the other needs a data set. So we know this is the one that needs a data set, so we can connect that,
that makes
to
sense.
Our split data one. And then the other one needs an untrained model.
An algorithm.
An algorithm, yeah. And this is where we choose the actual algorithm. So we've done a previous talk about AutoML, which is automatic machine learning. There, Azure will also choose an algorithm for you. For this one, you do need to choose your own algorithm.
So that means that I do need to understand my data in a way where I have some kind of basis for selecting a certain algorithm above others.
Yes.
But I could also perhaps build multiple pipelines, each with a different algorithm.
Yeah. That is what you can do. In this case, we do know that we are doing classification. We have 2 options. So we are doing a 2-class classification.
Yeah.
And
two options being the above or below the
yeah.
certain monetary border. Yeah.
Yeah, so here you see machine learning algorithms. I just click on that one. Then I have regression. I can skip all of those. I have clustering. I don't want that one. I want classification. A lot of them have options for multi-class classification. I don't want that. I just have one class. So I want to do a 2-class. There's a lot of different ones. And for this one, I just want to do the 2-class logistic regression. In another talk, we talked about logistic regression. So if you don't know what it is, you can watch that one. You don't actually have to really know what it is, but it is regression and it works with 2 classes. So that's good enough for us. So I can drag that one here and connect it to train model.
I love that you're putting it all neat and stacked next to each other, even though I don't think that's really necessary, right? You can
and there's also a button somewhere here where you can auto layout. It will automatically make it nice and neat.
But it's not necessary if you design it, apparently. Good. All right, so we have an algorithm and we have some data. So we're able to train a model, but it still has this nice little triangle error.
Yeah.
Why?
If you click on it, you just see label column, a value is required. So we have told it, this is the data, this is our algorithm that we want to do. But before we can actually do it, we need to tell it, like, what does it need to...
Yeah, it has no idea what to classify.
Yes. So I can choose a single column, and it automatically, because we've already connected the previous steps, it knows what the input is. It hasn't run yet, so it hasn't removed any columns, but it just kind of sees like, oh, you're doing something with this data set, so it probably has these. Right.
So it does a prefill. It's not completely correct, but it will help you out. And you can also type, I assume.
Yeah. So in this case, we want to choose income, save, and again, now it seems to be working again.
Good.
If you want to do a data set, like if you want to choose a label that doesn't exist yet in the drop-down.
Like if you transform your data and you create a new column and you want to predict that?
Yeah, then you can either type the name or you can submit, which means it's going to run until as far as is possible, and then you will get your new options.
That's interesting.
But in most cases, this is fine, and we can go to step 5 already.
Yeah. We're stepping up.
Yeah, you can see that it actually works quite fast. The 5th step is we need to score our data.
we have a,
So we basically just apply the model that we have by using score model. So we put that here. On one side, we need the trained model, and here we get a trained model. On this side, we need a data set. This will be our data set that we use to score. So that is the other 30% of our split
makes
data.
sense, because if you're going to use the training data set, then of course it's going to have perfect accuracy, because it already knows the data, so it can predict it perfectly. But we're going to have some data that it hasn't seen before, but that's similar, and then we're going to score how well it does.
Yeah, and now we have the score, so basically we are done, but we also want to know how well did it actually score. You can do this by just kind of scrolling through the data and noting how many mistakes it makes. That sounds like effort. We just want to evaluate. I need to type evaluate the model.
The biggest mess up that you can make if you type something wrong, and you'll lose precious seconds. All right, so we're evaluating our score.
Yes.
Good. I again see 2 inputs, but it's not whining.
This is actually, it has 2 inputs because it has a score data set, and then also you can do another score data set. So we have made an entire pipeline, but if you want, you can make another one, maybe with a different algorithm or different pre-processing of the data, and also connect it to here, and in that case it will compare the two options.
And you can have like a bracket where the algorithms fight it out, where your models, only the strongest model survives. Interesting.
Yeah.
So we now have an evaluated model. That seems cool. What are we going to do with it?
Nothing.
We're done.
We're done. We're done. What we do now is we need to submit it. If we submit, it's going to give an error. Yes. It's going to give an error because we haven't told it the compute that it needs to run.
Right, because it's gonna need to clean that data, it's gonna need to run that model, it's gonna have a lot of things to do. It needs somewhere to perform all those difficult computation thingies.
Yeah, and that is what we choose here. We select compute target. We can create a new one if we want. There's already a predefined one, so you can just name it. I have one that already exists. So I just select that one and I save it. If you want, you can even, per little building block, you can use a different compute target. Maybe if there's one part that you want a really strong, expansive target for, and the rest you can use the other one.
Yeah, it makes sense to have different computes, for instance, for your data cleaning step and your model training step that could use completely different types of compute. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good that the option is there, but let's not do that now,
yeah,
right?
We're not going to look at that because we just want results. So we've created this one and we can submit. Now, all of the runs that you will do kind of get collected into an experiment. So what you can do is you can create a new experiment or select an existing experiment. I am just going to create a new one, call it income 50K or less. It would be nice if you gave it actual nice names, but I'm very bad at naming. So this is it for now. I submit, and what it's going to do now, it is going to do all of these little steps and give us the results. So yeah, you can see when it's working on a certain step, you can see that everything is not started and the rest is already going to go to preparing, and that way this is all going to...
doing it in parallel, what it can do in parallel to speed it up.
Yeah.
So how long do you think this experiment will take?
A lot of times they take maybe 10 minutes, maybe a bit more, depends on how many steps you're doing, how big your data set is. But what I've done, what you already saw with experiments, I already have some that I have ready. So I already have an income one that we can look at.
You promise it's the same one?
It is similar enough.
It's similar enough. Well, we'll go for that.
Yeah.
So you've done an experiment already and we can see the results now.
Yeah.
Good.
So you can see all of the runs that we did, and if you click on a run, you actually go to the run, and you can see it is actually the same one. It has a different layout, but it's the same one. And what is really nice is that at the start of this talk, we started by right-clicking Visualize, and now you can also go to Score Model, for example, right-click, Visualize the score data set.
Oh, that's nice. So you can actually see the scoring.
Yeah, so here you can see the scored label and the probability that it gave it. So you can also just see, sometimes it's like 60% sure, sometimes it's not very sure. And if you go to Evaluate Model, you can also visualize the results. And here you can see things like the RSC curve, the precision recall curve, the lift curve. You can set the threshold because this is a two-class. You can set the threshold here. You can see the accuracy and everything depending on the threshold. So this is where you can, also just really play with the algorithm that you have.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I do have one question. 10 minutes or more. I'm a very busy man. I don't have a lot of time. So I create such a beautiful design pipeline, and then I think, I've run it, and I made an error somewhere along the way. I want to redo it. It's going to take me that much time again.
Nope.
Oh, well, it's good I asked then.
If you go to your experiments, you can actually also see the duration. And you see the first time that I ran this experiment, it took me 15 minutes. But then I changed a few things, and I ran it again. And this time it was less than 4 minutes. Here I changed, I don't know what I changed. I probably just changed the layout or a tiny thing. It took 10 seconds.
So then, basically, if you change something, it will the designer will reuse all the previous steps if they have remained unchanged.
Yes.
They won't take any time at all, except like a little bit of setup overhead, and it will like autocomplete that immediately. Seeing as it's the same, it won't change, and then it will start at the point where a change has occurred.
Yes.
That's really useful. So thanks for showing us how to set up this training pipeline. I think we're ready for some book recommendations.
I think we are. The book of today is The Master Algorithm. It's a great title, but what is it about?
Yeah. Well, basically, this is an interesting book in that the author is trying to find out whether a master algorithm. Basically, he's trying to answer the question of life, the universe, and everything using AI. Spoilers: he's not going to succeed, but he's going to hit some really interesting points along the way. So it's a read I would really recommend. Yeah, I think that sums it up, right?
Yeah. So, hopefully now you can try and make your own little pipeline in the designer, and this gives you a bit more options than you would have with automated ML, and a bit less options than if you would make it
using like a notebook.
Like a notebook if you just write code. But this is a good option if you kind of know what you want, but you don't know how to actually code it. Or if you know what you want, but you also know that you're not going to have to use like all of these custom things and you just want the default, then this is a really good option.
All right. Thanks, everyone, and we hope to see you soon again. Bye-bye.
Bye.